have a look at the papers. With us now, broadcaster Pete Price, in a new shirt, and writer and academic Mo Lovett. You don't disappoint, Pete. Thank you very much. Okay, Mo, let's start with you. This is a really interesting story, isn't it, that's come out of Kigali, that Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, and Prince Charles saying that slavery needs to be taught more widely. He's saying it on a national level, but possibly something that needs to be addressed globally.
Well, he's actually specifically talking about transatlantic slave trade. What he says is that it should be taught and understood as widely as the Holocaust in schools. And I think, on the surface, this seems like a good idea. It's part of the history of the world and our country specifically. But I worry about it because for a couple of reasons. First of all, he's the head of state in a constitutional monarchy, and he is supposed to remain above politics. That's the deal. And whilst I think there's a kind of narrow interpretation of politics that says that you stay above party politics, and he doesn't even really do that, to be fair. But actually, this is quite a political issue. He says he doesn't want to dictate educational policy, but within educational sectors, this is quite a political issue. Because it's part of a wider conversation about race theory in schools and whether that should be taught as theory or fact. So actually he has waded into quite a political row. And as somebody who's head of Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, I think that this does kind of shine a light on some of these issues. I do worry about this because he's going to be, he's heir to the throne now. It won't be long before, I suspect, that he is on the throne, and he's already waded into a lot of issues that maybe aren't party political, but our response to climate change, that's a political issue. As I say, critical race theory.
I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in because we don't have time and I want to get through these issues. What's the political issue? The transatlantic slave trade, or the fact that he's talking about dictating educational policy?
Well, I think both. I think it is a political issue within schools because the slave trade is part of a decolonising the curriculum narrative, and that is quite politicised. Now, there's nothing I learned about the transatlantic slave trade in 1980s, right? So, the idea that kids can't learn about these things as part of our history is obviously nonsense. Of course, we have to learn about our history. But I worry that this CRT stuff, it's kind of almost making us hostage to history in a sense, and really I do think the heir to the throne ought to stay out of educational policy, and he's perhaps dipped his toe into something that could become quite controversial and he doesn't even realise it yet.
Pete, what do you think, going quickly because we're going to run out of time for all the other topics?
I'm delighted that the Prince is getting involved and making his statements. We should never, ever forget slavery. We should never, ever forget the Holocaust, and it should be taught in schools. And if it takes a Prince to remind people, I'm from Liverpool, this is where the slave trade was rife, and we should never forget our past and learn from our past. And I love the Prince speaking his mind.
Okay, Observer, the front page of the Observer, Mo, a lot of talk about this, and Boris Johnson talking about a third term. They've called it delusional, haven't they? I mean, the Downing Street, I think, had said that he was joking, but the Observer saying he's delusional to even talk about it.
Yeah, that Commonwealth Summit in Kigali was the place to be, wasn't it? So in an interview with, I think it was Sky News, wasn't it? Boris said that he's not just looking at his next term, but he's actually looking at his third term in 2030. And this has led to accusations that he's becoming increasingly delusional. I don't know what it is about Boris Johnson that he exacts these such extreme, he's like a Marmite, isn't he? People absolutely either love him or they think he's delusional, trying to paint him as kind of the Britain's answer to Donald Trump. He does, but I mean, the truth of the matter is the Tories have had two devastating by-election results in Tiverton and Honiton and in Wakefield, and the Prime Minister is under increasing pressure because a lot of people have put it down to his dithering leadership, really, all those manifesto promises. We're too far away from Brexit now. We're sort of starting to heal from the pandemic in a sense. sense. So, you know, he's traded a little bit on his role in Ukraine, but now it's time for some domestic policies. And I think the optics of him being in Ukraine...
I'm going to jump in because we're going to run out of time. I'm going to jump in and run out of time. I want to say Danny Schuetzel has suggested the PM may have been joking. We're going to have to leave it there. I'm really sorry. Pete, I know you're shaking your head, but we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, both of you, for being with us this Sunday morning. Have a great week. Still to come here on Sky News Breakfast, we'll have all the latest as Boris Johnson plans to urge world leaders to support Ukraine. Everyone's at that G7 summit in Germany. They are arriving now. We've seen them, and that meeting will kick off today, and we will, of course, have all the coverage here on Sky News.